Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a look at simple Windows and how to load a program to the processor. Now I've used simple Windows a lot here, so it's already in my most used column. Click on that. The program should open up. Okay, now let's go up here to File, the upper left corner, and then down here to, in this case, the Training Room 1-1 program. Click on that to open. And this was a saved bookmark for the last time I was in the program. This one happens to deal with the analog selection for audio. To expand the program view so I have a chance to see what it looks like. What we've done here is I've expanded the items that are currently on the Ethernet. One is the touch panel. Well, I don't physically have a touch panel, but you will. I'm using an X panel version to play with this. Excuse me. The other devices that are in here include special smart button controls, and then this item right here is the interface from the DSP device that's been inserted into the touch panel. We can close these up. This is the DSP itself, and then down here is the switcher. And the switcher has all of the inputs and output cards loaded on it. Okay. Next we're going to take a look at the logic. I have this arranged in a number of subsystems for easy identification. The first subsystem is the DSP, and that's sitting there by itself. And the second subsystem is S2, or page control, for doing the page flips on the touch panel. S3 is for generating labels that go into the touch panel for information for the user. S4 monitor control is for controlling the two monitors. S5 deals with the actual wall control. And then finally we have, oops, so to go down here. Finally we have the audio select. As you can see, if we expand all of these, they get to be fairly complicated. Busy anyway. Anyway, when the program was written, it was done with the intention of trying to have logical blocks that are grouped together. Makes it easier to decipher and troubleshoot. Okay, the key thing I want to show here, though, is how to get this program loaded into the processor. Now, I'm currently connected to a CP3. And what I'm going to do, go up here to Project, Go down here to compile and convert, or you could use the fast key F12. It'll ask you if you want to save the current program first. I would usually say yes in the event that you made any modifications. And then it will start the compile process. And this will take a minute or so. Oh, well, less than a minute. Okay, now we have two program warnings show up here. It's important to know that a warning doesn't necessarily mean the program won't run. It's just a warning from the compiler that you might have a problem. You have to take a look at it to see whether it's important. In this case, signal planar power feedback 1 has no driving source. That's something I may want to correct, but it's not critical at this point. The reason I've left this open is because I need to see what happens when you folks try to run this thing in a real-time environment with the planar wall. So there's some information I still need before I can complete this portion, that particular portion that deals with this signal. The other signal here, memdump, has no driving source, is because that's a signal that I had included for diagnostic purposes, for testing whether or not my specially crafted module for doing wall control was properly remembering information about sources and where they go. Neither one of these is critical to the operation of the overall program at the moment. So we're good to go ahead and complete the transfer of the file. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes. Now watch, the next thing that comes up is going to be the page that tells the system where to send this file. Okay, now I've created an address book for this system and a couple other things I've been playing with. But one of the items that's on here is the CP3N, and you'll notice that I have an IP address for that. That's the IP address that the CP3N got when it logged on to my network locally. It was given that address by DHCP. So that's where I want to send this particular file, to that CP3N. Now it's possible you could have other processors on here, so you need to make sure that you probably won't have this problem, but you need to make sure that you're pointed to the processor you want the device that you want the file to go to. Once we're satisfied with that, then we go ahead and click OK. Now if you're talking to a CP3N, you're going to get the following page pop up. There was an initialization as the program starts to talk to the controller. A couple of things on this particular page. Notice up here you have a pull-down menu with the option to select any one of 10 programs. The CP3, like the Pro 3, has a number of program slots that are available, so you can actually send 10 different programs to this device and they can all be running at the same time, doing whatever you want them to do. So you could be controlling multiple items across several systems if you had to. In this case we're only doing one, and in this case we're only going to program 1, which I've labeled AV. It's going to the internal flash drive. We don't have a compact flash on it. Down here at the bottom, where the cursor is right now, it identifies the program that you're going to be sending. This area identifies the program that's currently sitting in the device. Now, as it turns out, it looks like they're the same, but for our purposes, I'm going to go ahead and resend it. Now, you could go ahead and erase this one up here and resend it. Or you could just do like what I'm going to do, which is to send it again, and it will overwrite whatever is in that program slot right now. So here we are, loading the file to the CP3. And we'll go ahead and restart the CP3. You get the please wait indicator. If you cancel at that point, it will stop the whole process. You'll have to resend it again. Now, notice you have the option to send it again if you want to. So like if you had stopped it in mid-transmission, you could go ahead and resend it using the send again. At this point, we're going to go ahead and close out. Now that basically completes what needs to be done in order to transmit the current program file to the CP3. Once that's done, it'll start running its program and it's up and ready to go. Now, the next thing I wanted to cover here is the use of the toolbox. The Crestron toolbox is handy for doing a number of things. And you'll notice where the cursor is right now, it's sitting on toolbox. I'll click that and that will open up this. Now, I previously had been playing with toolbox. So it's asking me what it's asking me now is whether I want to synchronize the current state of all signals. Since I've recompiled, I've generated a new signal tracing file, and it's going to look at that new trace file, so it makes sure that it's looking at all the signals that I've generated in the latest compiling. And here we are basically with a startup of the CP3. This message up here is an indication that the touch panel is trying to communicate with the DSP. You're not going to see a response because the DSP is no longer physically here with me. But when you do this, if the DSP is on the network, you'll see responses from the DSP. And once that dialogue starts between the DSP and the touch panel, the control program is pretty much out of it. It just serves as a point of being able to point the DSP to the touch panel. And then they tend to run independently of the program once that connection has been established. Okay, this first item here, DAC volume, out volume, that's an analog value that I've assigned to the volume control that's on the port, which is going to be doing audio play to the room. That's on the port number 10 of the output side. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of playing here with the control panel itself. For instance, I'll do a source selection. You can see that over here on the toolbox, that source selection was made. But basically what that did is it flipped the page. Now the next thing I'm going to do is select one of the devices to act as a source. See here, source 1. I've selected the source ID as 1. And I'm going to put it into position number 1 on the video wall. Position number 1 on the video wall is your A1 screen location, the upper left corner. Upper left corner is A1, center upper is A2, right upper is A3. Center left is B1, dead center is B2, center right is B3, lower left is C1, lower center is C2, and lower right is C3. So I've lined these up in accordance with the way that the wall is laid out per the planar arrangement. Okay, I can go ahead and continue with this, but this basically demonstrates the fact that Toolbox is monitoring what goes on. So if you need to look for anything in terms of diagnostics, trying to figure out what might be happening when you make a selection, you select a source, and you want to see what's happening, you can see it by using the simple debugger. That's what this is, simple debugger. And you can see here that it can be selected on the toolbar in this little graphic that looks like a square wave going up and down a couple of times. Okay, now we can drop out of this, or if we want to look at signals, other signals at the same time, you can expand these so you get all program signals, or you can look at just the signals that are associated with particular bookmarks. And these tie back to the bookmarks that are in the simple Windows program display. Okay, we can drop out of this, and let's go to systems information, which is this little I guy. Now, depending on how you set up excuse me, the toolbox, you may or may not have this in your tool lineup here on the toolbar, but I've put it on mine. Okay, so right now we're looking at the CP3, and the way you know that you're looking at the CP3 is down here in the lower left corner. You'll see the device that you're talking to. Now if you click on this pull down, you'll see there are options for other devices that are in my address book. So at one point I had the DSP available, so I had that in the address book. If I clicked on that and the DSP were here, then this would start to talk to the DSP. Unfortunately, it's not here, so you can't see that. Why am I talking to you about the system information file? Well, because it provides you with a couple of things that are critical, especially when you're doing the setup of the network. And that is the ability to set up the IP table. Now, over here, in this case it's in the third element down, fourth element down, it's IP table. Here you have a number of things called IP IDs. So IP ID 3 relates to the touch panel, the TSW1060NC. IP ID 4 is related to the DSP. 5 is related to the switcher, and 6 is related to one of the endpoints. Then you've got 7, which is also related to one of the endpoints. 8, 9, and 10. Well, it's remember this is in hexadecimal, so 0A is 10, and 14 is going to be way up there. I can't do hexadecimal conversion in my head so quickly. Sorry. Okay, now these items need to be there because these guys, the CP3 now knows that these IP addresses are related to it. So it knows that if it's told to go to one of these things, that's the IP address that it has to go to. What's critical about the IP table is that this is generated for the CP3. It's generated at the time that the program is compiled, and it's sent to the um, CP3 directly as a result of the compilation. What doesn't happen on an automatic basis is the transmission of information to the individual elements that are on the network. So for instance, this TSW1060NC does not know where it's supposed to be pointed to, in other words, what controller it's related to, unless you tell it. So you need to use the systems information tool to talk to the TSW1060. And the way you do that is just as we did with the CP3. You go down here and you would look in your folder and you would pick, well, I don't have a 1060 in here because I've been using Xpanel, but let's say we were trying to talk to this MT1000. You'd click on the MT1000 and it would go out and try to look for it. Assuming you get it, you would also have an IP table associated with that device, and you would need to change the IP table to tell it that the device points back to the IP address of the controller. And you also need to tell it that it is the controller's slave. It may be easier to go over this once you actually have everything there, and we can talk on the phone perhaps. Okay, here's another handy item that we can use, which is it's a network discovery device. Now notice here that the only thing that I'm seeing on the network right now in terms of actual hardware is a CP3, although I'm seeing two versions of it. That's because I happen to be connected to it both through the USB port and through the IP, the internet, or the Ethernet. But let's assume that everything was connected. If you use the system discovery device here, device discovery tool, you'll end up with a list of devices that are seen on the network that the tool is connected to. And then you can go ahead and click on it, for instance here. It will try to connect to the device, and it will give you information regarding the device. So it allows you to do a few things. First, you can take a look at the network device tree, or you can go back to simple debugger, which will cause this program to run as well. Firmware tells you what firmware version this is. Now this is the latest version of the firmware for the CP3. I recently updated this last night or the night before. It will show you what programs are in here. Now in this case there's only one. It shows you the program tag, which is AV, the program name, the timestamp that it was compiled, excuse me, and the original path for the file. Okay, the IP table for program 1, and it will only show you the ones that are active. So if there's some device out there that's not online yet, you'll see that it's not online. Okay, Ethernet settings, it allows you to check the setting for the IP address for this device. And then we have clock time. Currently set for Eastern Standard. All right. Anyway, should change so you reflect the time in Hawaiian Standard. Here's some functions that you can access. You might want to do some reading on that. You can find out information on this by going to the help files. The help files are interesting in that they're listed usually by topic. So if you have a particular topic you're wondering about, like you want to see something about device description, you click on that. This will lay the information related to the device description. Okay. All right. So that's a quick walkthrough of those items. Let's talk about the address book. And click on the address book. You can go ahead and set this up for each of the devices that you have and how you get to them. In the case of the DSP, I used to have it at address 29, and let's see, is there anything else that's critical here? I guess not. If you have any questions after listening to this, then write them down and send them to me. I'll try to clarify anything. Okay, let's go back to simple Windows. I don't expect you folks to be doing programming, although you may get involved in trying to debug something for me. It can get to be confusing because you got a lot of signals to have to worry about. What I wanted to cover next, however, is how do you get a program loaded. Let's start this from scratch all over again. I'm going to click out of here. Let's do a fresh iteration. When you get this and you get the program, you're not going to have a program laid out like I did in a file folder, in a file rather. You're going to have to worry about importing it from an archive file, which I'm going to send you. And that's why we use this item here, which is called import archived program. Okay. When you do that, you have the option to select the archive that you want to import. Now, what you're seeing right here is a program that I was looking at a while ago, which deals with the NEC multisync. It was a demonstration program that I used to find out how the NEC multisync was programmed by Crestron. And I used the module that they used in our program. So we'll go to Browse. Now, the program we're concerned about lies in this folder, Training Room Sub 1 Sub V2, and it is the item here that's labeled Training Room 1-1 Archive Zip. That's the one you're going to be wanting to grab. You notice the timestamp 1601. That's the latest compiled version. That's the one I just did for you. Going to go ahead and click open. And then we'll go ahead and do start. Okay. Now, since we already have some of these files in this particular folder, it's going to ask if I want to replace anything. You're going to be starting from scratch in whatever computer you're using, so you're not going to get this message. But if you get a new archive program, a new version, and you want to open it, you're going to end up with questions like this. Typically, depending on what it is you're looking at, it'll be yes. Okay, and here we are back at the bookmark that I had when I did the archive. It's that simple. And now, what will also happen at the same time is that archive will pull out the VTE Pro folder that deals with the touch panel. And I'll cover that in a separate video. So that's pretty much it. And I'm going to go ahead and see how bad a job I did on the recording.